Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. This morning, we have Dr. Edson Breedy, medical doctor, talking to us about prep for school, basically. We're getting the children ready to go back for school. Is there any stress involved? Do children really have stress? Let's find out this morning. Dr. Breedy, good morning to you.
Good morning. Such a good question. Do children really have stress?
Do they? Because I feel like when you become an adult, you learn a whole different meaning of the word stress.
Yes. So stress is something that you can experience or maybe will experience or won't experience based on stressors, right? And a stressor that does happen to children is transitions. So very often children can feel stressed by just the transition from their home schedule back to the school schedule, and that can show up in different ways that can affect children differently, especially if there's some underlying issues that parents might not be aware of.
All right, what are some of the signs we should be looking for then?
So the first thing to look for is obvious signs like the child coming to you and saying, "Hey, mom, dad, I'm feeling very stressed. I'm feeling very sad for a long period of time." Or worse yet, them saying something like they want to hurt themselves or they feel like they're not good enough. And just like you said in the beginning, are children really stressed? In the Caribbean and Trinidad, that might easily be met with, what you have to be sad about, what you have to be stressed about.
You don't have a bill to pay, you don't have nothing to worry about.
And with mental health, this is really important. You know, when someone comes to you and says, "I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling stressed out," and you get met with that first response, what you have to be sad about, it's very unlikely that they'll continue to elaborate and talk about the thing that's going on. So, you know, a lot of times when people find out I work in mental health, or they ask me, "So you work with mad people, you work with crazy people?" And I try to explain to them that someone only appears mad or crazy because you don't know the full context of what is causing them to act in this way. There's usually a long story, a long lead up of events that gets them to a point where they feel so stressed out it's turning into anxiety or depression or some sort of abnormal behavior. And if you don't know that story, it seems what you're seeing in front of you seems very strange. But there's usually something that's leading to that. It could be bullying from students. It could be bullying from a teacher. And a child who's 6 years old might not be able to articulate to mom how bad the bullying is that they're experiencing, or what other events might be going on.
Okay, so we have these things that the children might be going through. If they come to the parents and they say, yeah, they're feeling stressed, they're feeling sad, they're feeling unhappy, that's the clear, obvious signs.
But
then, like you said, if it is maybe last year they came and they said that and the parent met them with what you have to be stressed about. This time when they're feeling, they may not come back and approach it.
Right.
But like you said before, there might still be indicators.
Yes.
What other indicators can we be looking for?
So some common things you can find would be changes in behavior. That's what you're really looking for, a change. So you might have a change in sleep. Change in sleep patterns, so they might be sleeping a lot more than before or a lot less than before. They might be not enjoying activities that they used to enjoy. They used to love to play football, used to love to play video games, and suddenly the video games just pack up. They're not reading anymore, they're not watching TV anymore. They might be isolated from friends. So they used to be playing football or going out with people and trying to spend time with their friends, and suddenly they don't feel like doing that anymore, and they're just at home in their room. Changes in appetite, where they're suddenly eating a lot more than they used to, or suddenly eating a lot less than they used to.
How do we differentiate between these changes being abnormal versus being something like puberty? Because that is a transition period as well, and things will change. They might no longer be interested in some of the things that they were interested in before, and they might find new things or nothing to be interested in based on that transition. How, as a parent, do you suggest that we identify the difference between natural transition, like the one that your body is going through and you adjusting to suit, versus you being stressed or you being anxious or you being or negative impact?
Well, it'll be a combination of both things, right? Being able to acknowledge that they might have complained about something before, and then attach it now to this change in behavior that you're observing.
Okay.
Now, the thing about it is a lot of times parents aren't able to appreciate what's going on with their child emotionally, right? Because they might not have formal training, and that's understandable. And that's why I think teachers and school staff are so important. I think they've been doing a really good job recently in terms of identifying children and difference in their behaviors and red flagging them, sending a referral home to parents, stating that, hey, something seems unusual. I've been looking at your child for the past few years, so I have a nice comparison to make, and something seems different. I think you need to carry this child to a doctor to have them reviewed and screened.
What should the response be from a parent who receives a referral from a teacher? Because I mean, I don't know how often it happens, right? But I imagine if a teacher takes the time to sit down and write this up and send it home for you, what should be the response of the parent?
Great question again, right? First thing is to not feel criticized, right? This is not something against you, but it's something to allow an early detection of a potential issue in the child to give them support, right? So the referral would most likely be to an emergency room to get clearance. So they could go to Mount Hope emergency room, and that's where they would get to see a psychiatrist. Or the emergency staff might say, okay, maybe they could just be sent to one of the stress relief clinics, which might be Mount Hope Women's Hospital or Shigwana Stress Relief Clinic.
A stress relief clinic?
Yeah, where they can see a psychologist or psychiatrist.
Are there suggested ways that parents can start that stress relief from home, or do we need to first identify what is causing the stress?
No, they don't have to identify it. As soon as they realize something seems amiss, they could go to a private pediatrician or a family doctor, or they could go to their local health center. Yeah, so if they carry the child to the local health center, just talk about what seems to be unusual. The doctor who sees them there can usually write a referral, if necessary, to one of the stress relief clinics or to the emergency room if it seems to be, if they unlock something that is more extreme.
Now, you mentioned the emergency room a couple of times, right? And I know that we've had a challenge of maybe different perspectives of people saying what is an emergency versus what is not an emergency. Mental health challenges, things like stress, is that considered an emergency to be able to go to the emergency room, or should you just book a regular appointment with a doctor?
So again, it depends on what is said, right? So if the child just says, hey, I'm feeling stressed, maybe that might go to the emergency room, but that might be enough of a red flag, depending on those signs and symptoms I described, to at least start the process of going to a local health center or going to a family doctor. And then after that family doctor takes a thorough history, asking that child a lot of questions from the start of their life all the way to where they are now. They might unlock that. Yes, the child said they were stressed, but now they know that there's these symptoms of depression or anxiety that might need to be treated as an emergency, and that would be in the referral.
What are some of the risks involved with children who suffer from these things that go untreated, and they're in the school system, they go to school every day, sometimes they might just be seen as quiet students, as the case may be. What are some of the risks involved with those students who may be suffering from anxiety or depression and going to school like normal, but untreated?
Yeah, so it could affect them in terms of their academic performance. It could affect them in terms of just their self-esteem, because they might know that something's going on, realize that they don't have the support at home to explain these feelings to their adults in their life, and then, which is very relevant to Trinidad right now, as time goes on, if you're in a low resource area, low resource community, or low resource household, this could turn into crime. Right? If there are things like ADHD or autism or an intellectual disability that are causing them to feel this way, it could lead them down a path where they feel isolated and feel like they end up in a desperate situation and end up doing something that they could have avoided if they had gotten support earlier.
In terms of the parents who need to support, is there anything that they need to know before taking them to the health center, or anything that they should be looking for? I mean, I know you mentioned some of the symptoms that might show up, but is there anything that they can do before taking them to the health center?
Before taking, they could first go to the teacher, the counselor, or the psychologist at the school and just have a conversation. If your school doesn't have a psychologist or counselor, having frequent conversations with your child's teacher is so helpful. There's this person who's spending hours with your child and will have an insight into them that you won't. So just having a chat with them, how's this child doing? Are you noticing anything unusual? Are they having any problem in concentration? Are they behaving differently? And that can give you so much insight as to what's going on with your child outside of the home.
And in terms of monitoring, for students who might be going into a new school, you know, you just finished SEA, you're going into secondary school, or you just finished CAPE or CSEC, and you're going into university, as the case may be. What sort of signs should we be looking for? Because you can't really go to those teachers, they now get them, they didn't really know exactly what's going on. Yes, you can build a relationship with them, but are there things that we should be looking for in that transition?
Yes. So I mentioned some of the things that could show up besides them complaining about their mood and stuff. But when you're doing your checkup, you're calling to check up, or you're talking to them, instead of just asking how you're going, you could ask, how has your sleep been lately?
Right.
Are you sleeping a lot more? Are you sleeping a lot less? Are you eating 3 meals a day like you used to? You find you're eating a lot more? You find you're eating a lot less? Ask them about the hobbies that they're doing. Are they still partaking in those hobbies? And then, so just those 3 things alone will give you a better picture, as opposed to just asking them how they're doing. Because a lot of times when you ask someone how they're doing, they do the generic response. Are good, and they don't want to bother you. But you can ask a little bit more detailed questions like that.
And in terms of the role you mentioned earlier, the role of the teachers, the counselors in school, and that kind of thing. And I imagine that what we ideally want is a symbiotic relationship between the parents, the teachers, the counselors, and the students. Any recommendations as to how to make that work as best as possible? Because these teachers and these counselors dealing with hundreds of students, hundreds of parents on a daily basis.
Parents, talk to them. Reach out to them. The teachers already swamped with these 30, 35 children in their classroom, so they can't always reach out to every parent. But if this is your one child, you can reach out to the teacher whenever you get an opportunity to, or reach out to the counselor or psychologist if you know that your child is in a position where they're interacting with those 2 other ancillary staff.
All right, nice. Well, Dr. Breedy, anything else you want to leave with the nation this morning as we discuss the behavioral and emotional adjustments of transitioning back to school?
Yes. So it's really important to understand that throughout the year, there is a fluctuation of how often patients come in to the emergency room for mental health issues. And what we realize is that's because most of the times those patients come in because a loved one brings them in. Someone sees something's unusual and is like, hey, let me bring my friend in, let me bring my son in. And that person have oftentimes not brought themselves in. So we get a lot of calls or interactions with people who are not sure if they should, or if they should cross that line. And I want to urge people, if they see something is wrong, the first thing you can do is support that person by saying, hey, all right, this Saturday, let's go into the emergency room.
We're going together.
We're going together and just take them in and help them get to the place where they could speak to a professional, which might be at the health center, might be at the emergency room, or at a family doctor. If you see something, act on it and don't wait too long, because as more and more time passes, usually the situation compounds, it gets more complicated and harder to manage.
Dr. Breedy, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing these tidbits. I hope that the nation is listening and they take advantage of the opportunity to learn a little bit more this morning.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. That's Dr. Edson Breedy, a medical professional specializing in psychiatry, joining us this morning to chat about the transition back to school as we get ready for next week. We take a quick break and we come back with more.